Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
Guido, what happened? You almost gave up buying rental properties?
I just encountered a lot of problems, and just like any entrepreneur, we faced issues. But in my circumstance, I just put the building for sale and thought that would be it. But I told myself if it falls through, I'd stick it out, and I did. It fell through, and I did stick it out. And years later, after implementing my plan, I pulled out about $750,000 out of that property in a building that I gave up on, and that set me for my future.
On that one property,
Yep.
You were able to pull out $750,000?
Yeah, that's correct. And the best part about it is even when I pulled it out, the cash flow, it was still there. It's still cash flow about the same what I was doing.
That building went from being a major hassle to a real pivotal moment in Guido's life. He took that $750,000 and he used it to buy more rental properties. And today his portfolio generates six figures a year in cash flow. And it's real crazy to think about that if he had given up, he'd have nothing today. But instead, he's making six figures on his rental properties. On the podcast today, we're going to talk about what went wrong and how Guido turned things around. We'll also talk about how he's buying rentals out of state, and we'll talk about a local government program that he found that's actually paying to fix up his units. Joining us on the show today from Orange County, California is Guido Nunez. We'll take a really quick break to thank our sponsors. We'll come right back and we'll talk to Guido. I've had tenants that have either broken their leases or stopped paying rent, and I'm sure you know that this can be very expensive. It's very easy for the cost to exceed the amount of money that you're holding for a security deposit. And because of this risk, I started using the guarantors to guarantee my leases. The guarantors protect your rental income against rent defaults, vacancy loss, lease breaks, holdovers, and more. And this is all at no cost to you. Your tenants pay for the insurance premium. If you want to learn more about their platform, check out my bonus episode from September 15th, 2022. It's titled, Is This Better Than a Security Deposit? If you're ready to sign up, you can enroll within minutes by visiting theguarantors.com. Again, that's theguarantors.com. If you're looking for a quick and easy way to finance a rental property, reach out to Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She has a loan program where she only cares about your deal. She doesn't need to see your pay stubs, your bank statements, or your tax returns. The only thing she's going to look at is the deal. She wants to know, does the property cash flow? If it does, she'll give you a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. Now, the rates are going to be a little bit higher than a full doc loan, but it's still a great deal. She can close quickly and there's no hassle. If you want to learn more, reach out to Chaley personally at ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056.
Rental Income Podcast.
Guido, if you had given up on that first deal and walked away when things were at their worst, do you think you would have found a way to get back into investing in rental properties, or do you think that would have been it? You would have been done buying rentals?
I think it probably would have been it. Yeah, it was just a moment where I just kind of gave up.
So tell me what happened. Like what were some of the bad things that were happening?
I had everything from floods down in the basement. I had multiple evictions. And I was a property manager at that time at that building. So I didn't have, property manager or asset manager or anything like that, any barriers. So, I'd get the call at the middle, at the night and wake up and have to be, talking to tenants. Sometimes I would have to be the counselor of tenants, right? Or the referee of tenants. And, and there was always a lot of, issues going around, and at some point there was rumors that one of the tenants was selling drugs out of the properties, out of their units. So there was a lot. I think the moment in time when I had that flood and restoration had to come with their trucks was the point where I kind of sat down and I kind of threw my hands up.
So you had a lot of hassle, evictions, a lot of money going into the property. Well, was it actually profitable? Like, were you making any money on it?
I was, but not as much, not as I envisioned, that it would have been doing.
So it wasn't worth the hassle. So like for all the work that you were putting in there, it just didn't seem worth it. You listed it for sale, and then once you listed it for sale, then you immediately regretted it.
I regretted it. I was still going to make some money from it, and that was kind of how I was consoling myself from getting out of what I was in. But yeah, I almost instantly regretted it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I am glad I didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so then you ended up holding on to it, you turned the property around, and to make $750,000 on that property is incredible. Like, so was that because the market appreciated, or did you do something to the property to increase its value?
So two things. When you buy these properties, you're going to be looking at different elements, right? The first one is what we talk about is the value add component is what can we put into the property that's going to increase the value, right? Or what they call forced appreciation. The second thing is just the general appreciation, right? So when I bought that property, I bought it in an area that was gentrifying. I saw that. And about 4 blocks from me, I saw these kind of like new construction lofts being built. And, I just felt that the path of progress would eventually get to that property. It would appreciate without me doing anything. And that was kind of, part of my plan, my business plan, right? I didn't know anything about forced appreciation and value add. I thought I'd just buy it kind of, set it and forget it kind of
Yeah.
thing. And that was the funny part about it. So when I took over, I learned a lot of quick lessons. One of them is have a reserve, and that's kind of what I always tell new investors is always have a reserve.
Yeah. Yeah, I
But
think that's one of the biggest things
yeah,
people miss is that they just don't realize how expensive it can be.
yeah.
And yeah, having that money there will really save you. So the property appreciates. You've got $750,000 now. How did you access that? Did you sell that property or did you refi and take the cash out?
We refied it, so it was a great time with when interest rates were like super low, and so I was able to step down in interest rate and kind of re-extend the loan. So that right there, and with the rent roll increase, that by that time I kind of learned the whole forced appreciation tactic, where if you add into the units and improve them and get a better tenant and raise the rents to market rents, that actually elevates the whole value of the property. And between the appreciation of the exterior, right, the path of progress, and the value force of appreciation, that really just increased the value of the overall property.
And so
But
with
yeah,
the interest rates being low, or I guess lower than it was initially when you bought the property,
yeah,
and taking out money, like you kind of mentioned at the beginning or kind of hinted that your payment didn't really change that much.
yeah. My cash flow.
Your cash flow was pretty
Yeah,
much
my
the
cash
same
flow.
because the rents
Yeah.
had gone up a little bit. You were still at about the same place, but now you've got this huge chunk of money.
Yeah, yeah. So I was about I'm trying to think back when we did that transition, maybe about 75% to where the original monthly cash flow was.
Okay.
So we were about 75% to that number. Except we had
Right.
$750,000 now in the
Yeah.
bank to reinvest it.
I mean, so it doesn't sound like you're over leveraging or you're putting yourself in a situation where you're going to be cash flow negative on this building. Like you're kind of at the same place you were, but now you've got a huge pile of money to make some other investments with. And I'm assuming that's what you did. So you took that money and you used it to buy other properties.
Exactly. Yeah. So that became the seed capital for like all the other ventures that I went into.
So flash forward to today. What does your portfolio look like? What has that money been able to buy you?
So I'm in about 150 units right now across a few states. We just sold a property over in South Carolina. We're working on selling another one in Tennessee right now. So, the 150 could easily, go over 200 again. That's kind of where we
Wow.
were.
Okay, so you were up to 200. Now you're at 150. How many?
150.
150 doors. Now, how many buildings is that?
We are across
Five
five
buildings.
buildings. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's like 150 doors. That sounds crazy and like a lot of doors, but when you break it down that it's 4 buildings that you bought, it seems a lot more obtainable.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And that was kind of probably the first thing, or one of the things that as an investor you got to get, through is kind of this defeatist attitude that, these kind of numbers are crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to have a goal of 100 units. That's all I wanted. But now I'm like, 100 units seems like it's just a small number, right? It's like
Right.
bigger.
Yeah, I guess that's really true with anything. Like what, you set a big goal, and when you accomplish it, a lot of times you realize that it really wasn't that hard to get there.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah. So I mean that is really impressive though, to get to 150 doors. Are you doing this full time now, or do you have a day job?
No, I have a day job. I'm in consumer products, and that's kind of been my career. So I do this kind of on
On the side. Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, you obviously, you seem like you're really good at this, and you have a real talent for real estate. Is this something that you would want to do full time, or do you really just love your job and don't want to or don't need to do this full time?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think my most proudest moment to date on this side has been that my passive income now rivals my W-2 income. And my W-2 income is well into the 6 figures.
That's great.
Yeah, so to have the passive side now rival the W-2 side, that is the place where I wanted to be, years and years ago. And that's it's a tough question because I really enjoy my career, but you know if be so it's always hard to kind of explain this. If you want to be a multimillionaire, it's like you gotta find a path of like an entrepreneur or build a business or go along that path. Having a W-2 job is very difficult to reach that level.
It is.
Of wealth, especially financial freedom, because the day that your paycheck stops is the day that your living stops, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you start reaching on the passive side and building wealth from that perspective, you can go to sleep and you're still making money, right?
Yeah.
And that's the piece that I think is important for anyone to understand, and that's the key difference there.
And it's got to be a good feeling too, to know that if something happened to your job and tomorrow you go into work and you get laid off, or you get a new boss that you don't like, or something changes, you're going to be okay. You've got all your rental income that can help you get by until you figure out what your next move is.
Yeah, I mean that's what set it off initially. I was laid off in 2010, somewhere around there, and I just had to figure out like how I was going to become financially free. And I feel like that word is thrown around so much now, but that was a reality back then. It's like I couldn't have someone make that decision for my future. I had to do it on my own. So this was the path that I found, and it let me do it. So
yeah. Well, let's figure out how you got started, because I always think it's interesting to figure out how people got started and what they did. So this deal that you almost walked away from, this was your second property. Tell me about your first property. What did you end up buying for your first rental?
Yeah, so initially I started like doing residential flips, just kind of dabbling in it, nothing crazy. But from there it was kind of tough to find deals for me, and so I just decided that I was gonna do something in apartments. It's just seemed more lucrative to do something like that. So we found just a smaller building in a rougher side of town, and it was me and my brother, and we just kind of got this apartment. We just bought this apartment.
Now, is your brother still investing with you today, or are you doing this on your own today?
I mostly do it on my
Okay.
own. I mean, he's come into a deal here and there and just putting some money in there.
Okay.
But before it was me asking, and now it's he sees kind of the value of
Yeah.
doing this.
So a rougher part of town that sounds like this might be like a D class property.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Class D property.
What
Yeah,
was that like? What was that challenging too? Kind of like the property that almost broke you?
yeah. It, and I always tell new investors that want to get into it, right? It's just like there's always a way, to kind of get into this business. And that's one of the ways, right? Like investors always talk about class A through C, and a lot of them in all the circles that I run, it's just like no one wants the D's, right?
Right.
Even when the brokers put them listing, I mean, you can tell that it's going to be a tough sell because of what they are, right? The deferred maintenance is always there. The tenants were always going to be rough. I mean, you can go on and on about it, but Class D properties, you can get them for a lot cheaper than anything else. It's a great way to get into, multifamily. If you don't have a ton of capital, but obviously, it's going to come with a lot of warrant work right from the very get go. And one of the ways is that you have to be ready for the beginning headaches, right? Because you're learning your own on your own as well. So. Yeah.
One thing that's always scared me off from the D properties, and I've heard this so many times on the podcast, that someone buys a rough property in a rough neighborhood, and the numbers look great on the spreadsheet, and you think you're going to make all this money, but then when you count in the extra vacancy you're going to have and the deferred maintenance and just the weird things that come up, you end up actually not making money or not making much money. So, like, how did that work out for you? Like, did you have a tough time actually making money on that property?
Yeah. So the advice that I would give investors on this is if this is their first kind of, as they say, the rodeo for you, make sure the Class D property is locally owned. Because you're going to have eyes on it a lot more. You're going to have accountability with the property manager if you hire one. If you don't, at least you're going to be always visible to the tenant base. And that's so important. If you're going to buy a Class D property out of state, then what I would say is hopefully it's not your first one, because you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. And if you do it, make sure that you pay that premium for a strong, very good property manager that has experience in this type of property. So that's advice I'd give. So yeah, we cash flowed on it. But one of the things you have to do when you take over these properties is, provide for the very basic, security, make sure the fences are up, the doors are locking, the lights are always on at night, and start talking to tenants, trying to figure out who are the troublemakers, right?
Yeah.
Put rules and regulations, change your lease agreements, to set new terms so that the bad tenants are starting to weed themselves out. They don't want to, live there because you're putting rules, or they live by the rules that makes everyone happy. So, there are ways to do it.
So is this kind of your specialty, buying D-class properties, or have you moved up to better properties as you've gotten more money and as you've kind of moved up?
I've moved up. Yeah, I definitely moved up. I think, D allowed me to come, make that entrance, make some money, but, I just, it's just less headaches as you go to C and B properties, especially the B properties.
Yeah.
And I think I enjoy them more, There's a lot of pride of living, just the property itself. It's something where you actually want to just sit down and just take a breath and just be like, this is great.
Yeah.
And it's just harder in Class D.
So
but again,
okay, go ahead. I cut you off.
No, I was just going to say, but again, for anybody who wants to do it, there's money to be made. People make it all the time on these Class Ds. You just got to know what you're getting yourself into, and when you underwrite it, don't underwrite too conservative.
Right. Now, would you say that it was the D properties that you bought in the early days because that's what you could afford, and that's what seemed to be the easiest way to get started? But then as you got more money, and specifically that $750,000 cash out refi, now you had the capital to buy better properties. Well, is that
Yeah.
kind of the strategy you followed?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was exactly it. Yeah, that was
Okay.
exactly it. Yeah, but the one thing I will say about managing the properties is that I feel like it gave me a lot of the experience that I use, today in the current properties, and that's helped a lot, a
Yeah.
ton. Experience is just a great teacher.
Now you've got properties in different states. You're in 3 different states. Is that right?
So right now we were in three with selling the South Carolina property, but now we're in Tennessee and Arizona.
Okay.
We'll be in Texas. That's our expectation, but for right now we're in two other than California.
So why do you invest in different states? Like, would it be easier if all your properties were in the same area so that maybe you could have one property manager? If when you're going to go visit them, you're just
Yeah.
making one trip and you have one insurance agent. Like, would it be easier if they were all in the same area, or is there a reason you like to invest in different
Yeah.
areas?
So that's a great question. Like every investor has their own strategy, and I always tell everybody that whatever you find that works for you, that's what you should go with. For me, I realized that the U.S. has so many markets, good markets, obviously bad markets, and not as great markets, right? So in terms of efficiency of time, I just decided that I would be closer to California, where I'm based out of. And if I could fly into a market and fly out of a market within the same day, that would be if an efficient use of my time, right? So
Yeah.
I'm starting to pull back the assets to Arizona and Texas. And yeah, it would be a little bit easier, but then you kind of lose opportunities of growing markets, right? So like when somebody asks me, what do you do? I say, well, I invest in fast appreciating markets. And that there's a big truth to that, right? Because we're in Arizona because that's growing. We want to be in Texas because that's growing. And if we're only concentrated in one market, we're not going to be taking advantage of some of these other opportunities, right? I mean,
Right.
it's all about kind of reinventing your rental curve, right? You don't want to get to a point where your assets are plateaued and flatline, and if you move that capital to another market that's growing, that rental curve is going to continue to grow and increase, and that's ultimately what you want.
That makes sense. So you're just investing where the opportunity is. Like you find a good
Exactly.
opportunity and you're going to go for it. Now,
Yeah.
let me ask you this. This is something that I've been hearing about, but I've never actually seen it. But maybe you've run into this. I've heard that sometimes jurisdictions, maybe a city or a county, will offer money to investors to fix up properties that the county has an interest in making the property better. So they'll offer money to the investors to fix it up, which sounds great, but I've never actually seen anything like this. Have you heard of a program like this?
Yeah, I have. And it's funny. I don't think we talk about enough of taking advantage of some of these subsidized programs from the local government. But they'll do all kinds of initiatives. California, for example, has a lot of green initiatives. They'll pay for part of landscaping. Your property if you're going to be using kind of artificial turf, so you don't use water. Like I haven't done those, but I have replaced all the toilets, sink aerators, shower faucets with low flow. That cut the water bill by like 30%, and the municipality paid for about 100% of the actual hardware. I had to pay for the plumber, but the hardware all came free. But it's easy if you just go into the city websites and just look to see what kind of programs they're offering. Chances are high that you're going to find some program that's being offered.
And you found them just looking on the website for the local government?
Yeah. One day I just got a letter from the city advertising some sort of program they had, and that kind of led me to the website, and from there I just I'm trying to look for what other new programs are coming. That one led me to a different program in a different municipality that they were giving away commercial LED lights for the exterior of apartment buildings. And as long as you can prove that you installed them, they would give them to you for free.
I'm going to have to check that out. Well, if anybody wants to reach out to Guido, I've got his contact information on the website. You can find it at rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 422. I'd like to thank today's sponsors for making this episode possible. First, I'd like to thank Ridge Lending Group. If you're looking to finance a rental property, mention the Rental Income Podcast, and Chaley will credit you back $250 at closing. If you want to get some more details, you can reach out to Chaley at ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE, lendinggroup.com, NMLS 42056. I'd also like to thank Rent Savvy for making this episode possible. Rent Savvy is the first and only nationwide tenant placement service for filling your rental property with a qualified tenant for a one-time flat fee. You can get started at rentsavvy.co. That's rentsavvy.co. Thank you so much for checking out today's podcast. Make sure you hit that follow button. I put out a new interview every single Tuesday. And if you're following the show, you'll get notified as soon as the next episode comes out. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.